Donald Trump surrounds himself. This is what I said was going to happen if he got elected, because the first administration, I truly believe that he was wanting to be taken seriously. And so he was putting people in positions within the administration that everybody else was saying, this would be a good pick for you. And those people were pushing back against him, and he didn't like it. They were questioning and being like, I don't think we should do that. And he didn't like it. And so what I said was going to happen is exactly what's happening now. If Donald Trump got a second term, which he did, he's not going to put the best or most qualified people in positions surrounding him. He's going to put people that are pro-Donald Trump loyalists through and through, and that's going to be that. So.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Guys, if you don't know, I know, this is a long time. This is my best friend. No, just kidding. Now you know, Dani. This is Dr. Dani. This is Dr. Dani. She's absolutely amazing. I mean, she can tell you her own pedigree, but I highly recommend everyone follow Dr. Dani. This is going to feel a little like whiplash, but we're so lucky to have her. She tours the world, speaks at conferences about AB rights, about women's rights, about the manosphere, all sorts of things. She is, and I say this, and you guys know how much I value intelligence, the smartest person I've ever met on this app.
I'm so excited that you were able to come here today, Dr. Dani. Thank you so much for joining us today.
How many people are following you? This is and I mean, if there's ever someone to follow in your life, this is the most intelligent person I've ever ran into.
Thanks, y'all. I really appreciate it. Someone was like, Felice, you and Felice look like sisters. Like, thank you. Oh my God.
Amazing.
Love it.
Oh, so, all right. We've been talking about a lot of terrible shit. So, Dr. Dani, you want to keep it going?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you would, Dr. Dani. I mean, like how this applies now to voting rights in the SAVE Act. And then also, like, I know you lecture on coverture law and things. Like, if you could sort of just talk about the erosion of voting rights and how that might affect women coming up in this election. I think that could be like the next logical line of logic.
Yeah.
So the SAVE Act, I'm sure y'all have heard these two amazing people talk about it already. It's being brought forward under the guise of like, we just want to make sure, everyone that's registered to vote and no non-US citizens are voting. There's been multiple studies to show like that is basically at zero. That is not happening, right? And the way that the SAVE Act is going to work is that if you have a birth certificate that does not match your current ID, so if you changed your name when you got married, if you changed your name when you got married and you got divorced and you never changed your name back, right? You will not be able to vote unless you have a passport. Now that sounds super simple and easy, right? We kind of sat down and looked at how much it's going to cost to get a passport. Like it's somewhere around $300, right? Yep. You have to pay for the passport. You have to pay for, if you don't have certified copies of your birth certificate or your divorce decree or your marriage license or whatever, you're going to have to pay for that. So this is a voter suppression law. And what Felice was talking about in terms of coverture laws, someone else said if you're adopted, yeah, that's going to be a problem, right? Like if you ever took on anyone's last name for any reason, this is going to be a problem. Now, we know that this is going to affect a large group of women that got married and changed their last name. And this falls under coverture laws. So way back when the Constitution was made, right? I really need people to hear me when I say this because people are like, that's not true. It is. The only right that women have under the Constitution is the right to vote. That is it. None of the other constitutional, like nothing in the Constitution, none of the amendments, they do not apply to you. The only reason they have been applied to you is through courts, like working through the court system, or because they were just like, yeah, sure, okay, we're going to let this apply to women now, right? But you do not have any rights other than the right to vote. And the reason is because the Constitution says all persons. Well, at the time the Constitution was made, women were not people. They had no legal identity, and that's coverture laws. So this is old English laws that got brought over to the United States when people, immigrated here and started colonizing the United States. They brought these old coverture laws with them. And your legal identity was covered by your father, until you got married and you were given away in marriage. Still to this day, a lot of people on their wedding day hear, who gives this woman to be married? And then usually the father will say, I do, or her mother and I do. That's coverture laws. That's where that comes from. So it's saying, I am taking this woman whose legal identity is under me as her father, and I am now putting her legal identity under her husband's. And that's essentially what this voting act is doing. It's going to give one vote to one family, but that vote goes to the husband because the husband's identity will cover the entire family. That's also why our SA laws, if anyone, I kind of always say SA is decriminalized in the United States, and people get very upset about that. Well, when a crime has like less than a 1% conviction rate, let alone the arrest rates, this is decriminalized. And the reason that our SA laws work the way they do is because of coverture. Before women had any kind of legal identity, if you were SA'd, that was a property crime against your father or
your
against
chattel.
your husband. What, Felice?
I said, because we were chattel, right? It's chattel slavery. We were property of our husbands or our fathers.
Yep. So
it's like if you kicked a cow that you owned, right, is what we're saying.
Exactly. Let's use that example. Like if I injured your cow and I made your cow less valuable for you to sell at auction, I owe you money. So if I SA your daughter who was a virgin, I have now damaged your property to the point that it is no longer as valuable to you to give away or to sell. Right? So it was a property crime against the father, and you either owed the father money or you had to marry her because that was the only way to rectify it. If you were married and you were SA'd, that was a crime against your husband and you owed the husband money or you owed him some kind of compensation. Yes, this is where the idea of damaged goods comes from, right? Because you were literally goods. So we're seeing a big shift back to that now in the United States. We have the SAVE Act. In Texas, they have ads going out encouraging male partners to report their female partners for ABs. They're saying if you have a female partner and you know she's going to get one or she has gotten one, please call us and contact us so we can make a legal case, right? That's ownership of somebody else's body. We're criminalizing pregnancy left, right, and center here. That's the state having control over your body, right? And saying that they have rights to your body. So this is kind of where America is really starting to shift back to. And we're not seeing, we are seeing some resistance to it, right? But we don't have a checks and balances system anymore. I'm sure y'all have covered on that, right? If the courts make an order and they aren't followed, your court system is dead, right? It's dead. Same thing with Congress. Congress isn't going to protect you, right? So, and then the same thing with no fault divorce. Like they want to do away with no fault divorce. Well, you shouldn't be able to make your own choices in that, right? You don't have a right to make your own choices in that.
Right.
So all of these laws are relatively new, y'all. Like all this stuff, we only have these kinds of rights over, maybe the last 100 years, and some of them quite less than that. Like SA in marriage used to be legal until 1993.
Yep.
So all this stuff is really new.
We were talking about the manosphere yesterday, Fax and I, and we were talking about the cross section of men who believe like any interaction with women is a drain on their financial resources, blah, blah, blah. And I was saying, hey, the reason that women need financial security for men is I don't blame women. It has to do with the patriarchy. We weren't, because we were chattel, we were goods, we were property of our fathers and husbands. We couldn't own a house. We couldn't accumulate wealth. We couldn't fill out a loan application. There was no hope for us. That's because any financial wealth, even if I was a rich woman that had an inheritance, when I married, it went to the man, essentially. And I want to, under the SAVE Act, just to show this, I don't want to show my name though. I just want to show people some options because I said I was born in Arizona. So for the SAVE Act, essentially, if you're a woman, your birth certificate does not match. And Dani, you speak to this better. Do you want to quickly, before I go, I'll show my passport card in a second, but do you want to talk about like around when Clinton was running against Trump and they were doing sort of the research around if we just stop women from voting in general, like that will be beneficial to the conservative. Like the goal is low voter turnout with conservatives.
Yeah. So, and we're especially seeing this with the younger generation now, like 18 to 25-year-olds. They're much more conservative now than even like boomer white men. So at the time they started doing research and they're like, well, where's the biggest gap, right? One of the biggest gaps is education, for sure. The number one predictor of how you will vote is education. And that's been true for quite a while now. But the number two predictor of how you're going to vote is your gender. Right now, men are much more likely to vote conservative. Women are much more likely to vote liberal. That's been true since around the time that Clinton and Hillary Clinton, let's be clear, Hillary Clinton and Trump were running against each other. They started to do that research then, and they noticed this massive gender gap. That gender gap has only grown because now men are the least educated demographic. Women now make up the majority of undergraduate degrees, the majority of graduate degrees, the majority of medical school and law school degrees, right? So now women are far more educated. Remember, the number one predictor is education. So we have that gap growing, but now that gap is kind of Venn diagramming with the gender gap because men are becoming less educated. Women are becoming more educated. Women are becoming more liberal, men are becoming more conservative, and this goes hand in hand with a lot of those articles that you're seeing about men are becoming more religious. For the first time in our country's history, men are now more likely to say they're religious than women. That's not an accident, right? Like that is an arm of the right wing. Yep. These evangelical right, this white evangelical right wing. So those things are working together. Well, men aren't flocking to religion because they need God or they're craving this spirituality. They're flocking to religion because they found another institution that will tell them they deserve this hierarchy. They deserve to be above people. That is your rightful place. And actually, if anybody's trying to take that away from you, that is oppression against you, right? So all of this research started around the time that Hillary Clinton and Trump were running against each other during Trump's first election. And they've had all of this time to build upon that and create, we've got Project 2025. A huge goal of Project 2025 is to reduce women's rights because they know if they can stop women from voting, we'll never have Democratic leaders again.
100%. Yeah. And this is what I've been harping on a lot recently is that this idea that white men are the problem here. Like, let's be 100% serious here. White men are the problem. And white men are the problem because white men have been told that they're special, and white men have been emboldened by society to think that they're superior to everybody else, even though we know that, like, of the three of us up here right now, I'm not only the least educated, I'm also probably like the least strong one up here. Like, Felice is running like 10 miles every day. I run to Taco Bell every now and then, right? You know, like this.
Danny's a professional bodybuilder. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, this whole thing, like, I'm not special, right? I'm not special. And the sooner that white men figure out that being uplifting and using the privilege that we have to share these messages and get this information out, the sooner we learn that that's not degrading us or pushing us down by lifting others up, the sooner that we start getting shit fixed better for everybody.
Yeah, it's if you've always been told you're great, right? And there's a really good book by Ijoma Oluo who talks about this. And if I murdered that name, I greatly apologize. But it's called Mediocre. And the book is so beautiful. It's so well written. It's so accessible. Like, she writes it in this very accessible way. But it talks about this myth of like white male superiority. And because this has been the narrative throughout our entire country, what's actually happened is white men have had their mediocrity rewarded consistently, right? Yes. And they've been promoted and promoted. And she gives example after example after example, right? And
mediocre men failing up, right?
Failing up. And exactly like Matt was just saying, We can look at data to the exact opposite, right? All data points to female leaders create solutions and solutions that last longer.
Yep.
All data points to if you have female leaders at the table, you're more likely to find a solution. If you have diversity at your table, you have a diversity of ideas. Companies actually do better, perform better, have more solutions the more diversity they have at the table. We know this through data, but because white men have had their mediocrity promoted, since the beginning of time, they look at this and they're like, well, this is unfair. This is unfair. I deserve it. White men is DEI. Right?
Yes.
Like that's what DEI really is. That's
Yes.
what affirmative action really is white men just getting the ups, right?
Yes. It's this, that's why I
Men's
laugh.
presence have been affirmed in society for hundreds of years.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's why I laugh
White
so
men
hard.
say, "Where's our safe space?" Wait, I'm sorry. Just one more thing. I'm sorry for
go ahead.
interrupting.
Go ahead.
White men keep saying, "Where's our safe space? Where's our safe space?" It's Western civilization. That's where it is.
Well,
you're
first
in
of all,
it. You're swimming in
You're
it.
in it.
well, yeah, that's that. Sorry, I had like 6 things go through my mind all at once because I had the audacity to look to my right. Okay. White men, there's like, where's our safe space? Where's our safe space? You own the space. We own the space. Literally everywhere that we go is our safe space. I brought this up a couple of days ago. I can't remember who I was talking with, but I'm like, there is not one white man who has ever had to talk to his white son about putting keys in between his fingers when he walks to the car in the gym parking lot. Was it us? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I was talking about how I can't make the same loop when
Right.
I'm running. I have to be conscious. I've been mugged twice in the last year. Like I have to be conscious of where I'm running, what time it is. Yeah.
White men's safe spaces literally everywhere at any time, period. That's our safe space. The idea that we diminish our strength when we get diversity, I point this out also, like diversity doesn't make us weaker. Diversity is a benefit, like what you were saying, Dr. Dani. It's a benefit. Like I come at it from a military point of view, right? It was diversity that won World War II for the Allied forces. It was a gay man who broke the Enigma code. It was the indigenous people using the Windtalker program of their languages that allowed us to communicate behind enemy lines without fear of our plans being determined, right? It was diversity that got us to the fucking moon. It was black women that got us to the moon, right? It was women scientists across the board that got us to the moon. It's women scientists are the reason that we are able to communicate like we are right now, because without women scientists, we wouldn't have Wi-Fi. Right? And so this idea that diversity makes us weaker is such a white man point of view on things, because we've always been told as white men that if you can't solve it, you're not trying hard enough. And if somebody else solves it, you're weak and you need to not be weak. And this all comes back to the how the patriarchy has been hurtful for men also. Right?
Yeah, and I love, because you were talking about like your safe space is everywhere, right? Like it is this world. And Mona at the Hallway, another amazing feminist writer, I recommend literally anything that she writes. She puts it as patriarchy and also by extension white supremacy, right? It's so everywhere that when there's a reason that men are sitting here going, where's the inequity, right? Like, where's my privilege? She says it's like asking a fish, what is water? Mm-hmm. A fish has never had to consider water. A fish swims through the water. It is what they were born in, right? They were born into water. They just swim through it. It just exists around them. They don't ever think about it. So then when you ask the fish, what is water? They're like, what do you mean? I don't understand, right? Like a fish has never had to consider what water is. It's just born into it and it swims through it.
That is fucking perfect. I love that so much. That's so good.
And because of that, because privilege is so baked in, is so innate to the white male experience in Western civilization, when other minority groups or women come around and say, hey, I'd like some equality or some equity or my seat at the table, that to white males who know nothing but the experience of 100% unchallenged privilege, that feels like oppression to them.
Yes.
Right? Equality and equity feel a lot like oppression when the only reality you have ever known is innate privilege.
Yes. And I will.
Dani speaks about the gender credibility gap also really well. Matt and I talk about the gender credibility gap how people listen innately to men, right? Like you are trained in society to essentially stop listening when women speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Dr. Dani.
No. Go.
I was going to say the one thing that I've been harping on a lot lately, specifically for white men, is that we don't have the answers because we've never faced systemic oppression before. What we have is the privilege to voice that opinion, because like what Felice was saying, and like what I've said, no matter how many times the two of you go out and say something, if I say the exact same thing, people are gonna be like, that is such a good fucking idea. Why didn't anybody ever say this before? And it's like, well, no, they have, you fucking troglodytes. You just won't listen to them because they're not.
That means cave dweller, MAGA.
Yeah,
that means person who dwells in a cave. No, that's too long a word. MAGA doesn't get it.
I know.
That means cave
That's
dweller.
why I like using it. Sometimes they're like, I'm not a trogo. Okay, sure, dude. But if you're not a white man with a big beard and a megaphone, nobody's going to listen to you. And that's why I'll continue. I'll say it all day, every day. I don't have an original thought. Nothing I come up here and spew is anything that I came up with by myself. I listen to what everybody else is saying, and I'm like, well, nobody's listening to them, so let me just amplify that message again. And then people are like, oh, fuck, never thought about it that way. I was like, I know you didn't, stupid. Fucking stop. Start thinking about it. So
I'm like, I just said that.
yeah, exactly.
I told Matt that last week.
Literally, Felice is like
nope,
texting me
that's
that.
the first time I heard it.
Never heard it. Never heard it before.
It even happens so it happens on a grand scale and then it happens on like a micro scale. Like my family is guilty of this. They will all say something, right? And they will look to my male partner and they'll be like, is that true? And they're like, why, this is her area. Why are you asking me? Like, even if I know the answer, she is far more qualified to speak on it. Like, why is everyone turning to me and asking me if this is true? Mm-hmm. Right. And then we see it all the time in lectures and things like that. When male colleagues say something, if somebody disagrees with it or whatever, they'll be like, I have a question about what you said. I'm curious about this part. Or, when you said this, did you mean this? Because I don't think, and if I say something, literally men will just be like, I don't think that's true.
Right.
And what evidence do you have? Right. What evidence do you have? What education do you have? Right. What's your expertise in this area? Nothing. They got nothing, right? This isn't their expertise. They just think they know more and better because they're a man and they doubt what you're saying immediately because you're a woman.
Yep.
Can I give one example that happened? Dani and I do lives we used to called the broadcast. We're taking back the word broad. And Dani is an effing doctor, right? Who is giving facts. She's talking about how, people devalue women as they age and talking about the eggs in the uterus getting older. And then she was talking about how actually the same is true of men, that as men age, their semen is less valuable, the same thing is happening. And we have just a random MAGA idiot in the chat who's like, my uncle who was 72 had a baby with a 21-year-old. It's like, this is a doctor is now speaking and a white male is like, excuse me, my idiotic anecdotal idea about my 72-year-old uncle being a creep who violated a 19-year-old's body seems as relevant as the words a doctor is speaking right now.
Yeah, and that's a fact that I love that a lot of people don't know. So I'm just going to throw this one out there because I love it so much. But when you go to get fertility tested, right? When people go to get fertility tested, women have to go through a whole gambit of tests. Some of them are very painful, right? Like if anyone's ever had an HSG, that's a very, very painful test. Men have to go have an orgasm in a room with resources supplied to them, right? That's all they have to do. But the cutoff for male sperm quality is the 5th percentile. That means that in order to fail, you just have to be in the bottom 5%. 95% of men will pass that test, because it's not because 95% have great quality sperm. It's because we have set the threshold for quality sperm so low that 95% will pass. Now, when you consider that, and you consider the fact that we're criminalizing pregnancy, a woman just got arrested in Georgia at the beginning of this month for how she managed her own miscarriage.
Yep.
Right? She had a miscarriage. She was about, I think, 16 or 17 weeks along. She had the miscarriage at home. She disposed of the contents of the miscarriage. This was a completely non-viable pregnancy, right? Long before the age of viability. And they arrested her for how she handled her miscarriage. The majority of miscarriages are caused by male DNA, because it is the male DNA and the male sperm that creates the placenta, right? And also DNA fragmentation is what we generally worry about as men get older and older. Well, it's not to say that you have no sperm, and it's not to say that you have no eggs when you hit 35 or older. It's just to say that the quality goes down, right?
Right.
So DNA fragmentation in male sperm increases between the ages of like 30 and 35, and then it exponentially goes up. The more DNA fragmentation you have, the higher and higher likelihood of having a miscarriage. There are women that have had babies at 70 years old as well, right? That's not to say that it can never happen, male or female, to create a baby, right? It's just to say that DNA fragmentation goes up. And that causes a lot of miscarriages, but we always blame women for the miscarriage. Notice how in our history, it's always been women blamed for infertility. It's always been women blamed for miscarriage. Somebody, Fortune Rose, mentioned preeclampsia. Yes, the male DNA has a huge, it's a big factor when it comes to developing preeclampsia, because it has to do with how your body kind of interprets that genetic material. Does it interpret that as like a threat, as a foreign body? Preeclampsia is very complex, right? But the male DNA and male sperm has a lot to do with developing preeclampsia. So a lot of your pregnancy complications and a lot of the things that cause miscarriage have to do with the quality of male DNA that's being introduced. But we don't talk about this. And then
mediocre men ruining everything.
I know. And then we hear all these men that are like 35 and 40, right? And they're like, I'm just going to hold out for a 19 or 20-year-old. As if she's going to want you, number one. And also, your DNA ain't great, bud.
Right. Yeah.
I sent the pregnancy is a crime PDF to everyone in my Discord, and Matt, I'll send it to you as well, because it's great information. And just know, I just want you to know the most interesting, I mean, there's many interesting things. If you're in Alabama, watch out. It's a crime to be pregnant. Like, imagine we're cutting Medicaid, right? And Medicaid expansion. But if you don't get prenatal care, you're going to end up in jail.
Right.
You're going to be charged with a crime. And I want you guys to know the most interesting part of this pregnancy is a crime. And you can see how they're criminalizing women for being pregnant across mainly the South, but all around the country, is that I was thinking, oh, this must be the typical like brown and black women being targeted. It's in fact the opposite, because why? They value not the woman, what's in her stomach. And do they value brown and black fetuses?
No.
Or do they value white fetuses?
It's that
so
part.
Actually, the majority of the women who are targeted for this are actually white women.
Hey, and real quick, I can feel a lot of the white men being like, well, actually, in the comments, fucking delete that shit. Just sit down and listen. All right? Just sit down and listen. Learn some shit for 2 goddamn seconds. You fucking chuds. Okay. Sorry. I could feel it. I could feel it like permeating from my computer screen. Everybody's like, well, actually, fucking stop. Fucking stop.
And you're supposed to be uncomfortable when you're growing, right? Like if you imagine us, like, think of like the Russian doll sets, right? Like a circle within a circle within a circle. The inner circle is your comfort zone. This is your comfort zone. You don't learn in your comfort zone. You don't grow in your comfort zone. You just exist in it.
100%.
Directly outside of that is the learning zone. Guess what? The learning zone is outside of your comfort zone. Not so far out, but just right outside of it, right? That's your learning zone. Just outside the learning zone is the growth zone. Both of those zones are outside of your comfort zone. By definition, if you are learning and growing, you should be uncomfortable.
That's right. That's right. There is no
the
growth.
Discomfort.
Sit
the longer
in it.
You sit
damn
in it. Let it wash. I hate it, but
Marinate.
that is where growth happens. Is when you're uncomfortable and you think that can't be true. I've never heard that. What's happening when